wanted to, because the problem with YouTube is not a lot of people are actually watching the live streams. Like some people watch it, but it's not like we're not getting a lot of people. And I was hoping like with the problem with YouTube is that sorry. So with YouTube, yeah, not a lot of people are watching the live streams. So that's the problem. So that's why I wanted to try Twitch as well at the same time. But, hopefully some people will watch today.
Yeah, find some forum where they talk about, like, I don't know if we're going to end up talking about like cancel culture or whatever, but I mean, there's got to be a zillion forums on the internet where they talk about cancel culture, right? So if you just post a link to this discussion, a whole bunch of people are going to see it and be curious.
Yeah. I'm interested. Let's talk about that afterwards, because maybe you can give me like advice on how to do that exactly.
Okay.
Because you seem to be doing that pretty successfully for your mathematics club or mathematics podcast.
And there's probably a lot more philosophy forums than there are math forums. I only know like 2 different math forums that I linked that to, and that's how I got pretty much everyone on it. So
like the whole community.
It might be helpful.
The whole
too.
genius community.
Yeah.
We should see if we can get this Vladimir fellow to come and talk to us at some point. He's the one with the huge list of things there.
Wasn't that a crazy list? I
love that
looking
list.
at it today.
It's a good long list, some of which I guess I would say is philosophy, and some of which I would say maybe isn't, but still an interesting collection of things.
Yeah, very interesting conversations. I actually sent him a message today. Because I do want him to participate in one of our stuff and to connect. I'm gonna get my coffee and then I'm gonna throw you guys like a question.
To the wolves here, okay. There's the kitty. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So everybody is doing well health-wise and all that sort of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Aside from being physically pretty inactive, I'd say I'm pretty healthy.
Yeah.
Isn't the number of COVID cases declining?
Yeah, I'd say by quite a bit. I feel like it's still higher than it was like way back in like April, but it's down from where it was earlier in the winter.
I mean, it seems so, and it seems that if the number of vaccinations is increasing on a daily basis, that should help. The only thing to be a little, wary of are these different mutant strains that are coming around and how effective things will be against those.
Oh yeah, that's scary. So we don't know yet whether how effective the vaccine will be against the variants.
No, I think what I've heard is the drug manufacturer are saying they'll try to have something by like September or something like that.
I was hearing that for the most part is effective against the variants.
But there's several variants now.
But maybe not 90% effective, a reduced percentage, except for the South African variant.
Right.
That's what I heard.
At least that's what I've heard. I haven't done the test myself, so I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, that South African one is going to be tricky because it escaped the net.
Because they don't even yet have data on the transmissibility or the lethality of that yet, do they? That I'm aware of, because it's still fairly small on the radar.
I have no idea.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
That's what I heard, Craig.
So should we like start our conversation?
Um,
All right, let me start recording this.
all right, you go for it.
All right, guys. So yeah, I was thinking maybe we can start today by talking a little bit about this cancel culture thing. People have been talking about that a lot this last week because this sounds silly, but this girl Gina Carano got fired from a Disney Plus show, The Mandalorian, and apparently she tweeted a bunch of things about the mask thing, saying that people shouldn't wear masks, and the last one was she compared conservatives, the treatment of conservatives in the United States today to the treatment of Jews during the Holocaust and in Germany.
Pre-Holocaust, 1930s Germany.
Sorry?
Oh, I said it was the pre-Holocaust. It was
Yeah, the
talking
pre-Holocaust.
about the events of lit up to it.
The events that led up to the Holocaust. So yeah, so people have been talking a lot about this thing that people can't say certain things or they get canceled. I think that's my understanding. That's what people are saying.
Well, and that's one way of looking at it. Of course, the other way of looking at it is what you say may have consequences as well, and you need to take responsibility for it. So there are multiple angles to look at that question.
Well, let's look at it.
Yeah.
I would say we've grown into an extremely intolerant society. Like we're intolerant of ideas that threaten, whatever our core beliefs are or ideologies. Like anyone that kind of challenges it, there seems to be kind of a very well-oiled witch hunt machine that can kind of latch on to things. I mean, when I saw that article, I was like, oh man, I really like that show and I like that actress. What's the deal? And I had to skim through so many articles about that were saying, she said anti-Semitic things, blah, blah, blah. And the first they quote all the other people who are saying that she's bad. And then you got to kind of go through the articles. Then you find, when I found what she actually said, I was like, this is like, I don't know. I did not, as a Jew, I did not find it in any way offensive compared to the rhetoric that's been going on, like not just in general, but it's.
I think also, I mean, so what was the company that she got fired from? So it was like Star Wars. So what was the media?
Disney.
So, I mean, they might just be looking at it from a financial perspective. I wonder if they're really thinking about their ideology, or they're just thinking.
In other words, it may cost us more to keep her than it would cost us to fire her.
Yeah. How do we know they're really thinking about it ideologically? Maybe they're just thinking financially. We don't want people to boycott us, therefore we're going to fire her.
Oh, I'll practically guarantee you that's
read minds.
Oh, what?
Because the cancel culture can read minds.
But yeah, as far as like canceling people when there's not a financial impact, like let's say that wasn't an issue at all.
Well,
I'm Jewish myself, and yeah, I think I'm like. I think like in what she's, I feel like my view is unless someone's like really explicit about like being racist or something and does it like repeatedly and like just doesn't stop, like we should like let them clarify it. Like if they're making an analogy, like if they're saying conservatives are like Nazis and it's not like super cut and dry, I think like we should not fire them, in my opinion.
Let me maybe we should start like from a solid base, right? Let me read. I'm just gonna read real fast what she wrote, so we know exactly what she said. But it's important to mention that there were a number of tweets before this one that people were criticizing her. This is like, I think people have been calling her to be fired online now for months because she tweeted a bunch of stuff in the past. But this is the one that did it. This is the one that did it. Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? So this is what she tweeted. And then this is what Disney said about it. Gina Carano is not currently employed by Lucasfilm, and there are no plans for her to be in the future. Nevertheless, her social media posts denigrating people based on their cultural and religious identities are abhorrent and unacceptable. So this is what people have actually put out there.
There was what in that, I just don't, and that's what it freaks me out about what's happening, is not even like yes, they're a private company, they can hire and fire whoever they want for whatever reason, but then like they put out the story like it's never okay, like there was nobody, I didn't find anything degrading to anybody in her comment, like whether it's historically factual or not. Which
No, it was just wrong. That's all.
But I didn't get it.
Right. The distinction being that one is born, one in that part of Europe, one was ethnically treated as a Jew, which means that's what one was born into, versus political conviction, which one chooses.
But political convictions played a role in that too, and like it started with the Jews. But if you were other people who weren't Jews would lose their jobs if they were like anti-Nazi. Like
so, I mean, the whole thing was the great Jewish banking conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
That was all the rage in Europe around then, was the great Jewish banking conspiracy, and that had been fueled for, I'm sure, many decades prior to the rise of Nazi Germany.
Well, there's a lot of things that we can talk about, especially if we want to have a conversation that is about cancel culture in general. But I mean, it is a little bit of a stretch to compare, I think at least, the treatment of conservatives in the United States to people being sent to extermination camps. I mean, that is kind of a crazy idea. I mean, correct me if you think that I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, I think the analogy is totally absurd.
Yeah, that's what
there's a question.
I think you put it better than I did. Yeah.
Absurd. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a question, is the comparison a valid one at all, or is it like way out of context? But then there's the question, should she be canceled because of it?
I think she just proved her entire point right by being the way she was canceled, because you're she never even necessarily said it's conservative. She said treating people hatefully because of their political beliefs. So, and we immediately go to that.
Yeah, but
I'd be wary of using the term cancel here, because when you say someone is canceled, it's like, hey, let's terminate them with extreme prejudice. And they wouldn't put a bullet in her head. They fucking fired her, right? Because she did not represent the values of their company. And you know what? If I don't represent the values of my company, I'd be fired. And if you don't represent the values of your company, say Michael, for example, you'd probably be fired. That's welcome to business in America and Western Europe as well.
I understand the point that she's trying to make, right? But it is kind of a like I said, and like Michael said a bit better than I did. Like it's kind of an absurd comparison.
I agree, but look at all the times that they've made that, like the left, for example, has made absurd Hitler concentration camp comparisons to fucking Trump for the last 8 years. And like her co-star, what's his name? The Red Viper Adorn. I don't remember the actor. But I mean,
Pedro Pascal, I think.
Yeah. He's amazing. But like,
It's good, yeah.
my Facebook is like filled with, memes that have been comparing, the treatment of immigration, illegal aliens and kids at the border. Like, oh my God, it's basically Nazi Germany. No, it's not. It's very fucking different. And people had been splashing that all over for years. And I didn't hear about anybody.
So-
Nobody's getting fired for that. So it's
Are you saying that, well, actually the Republicans in general kind of got fired for it in the last election, but are you saying then that there aren't children who have been removed from their parents and put into what are effectively concentration camps in this country by ICE? Is that what you're claiming?
if a ICE detention center is not a Nazi Germany concentration camp.
Well, no, it's not. It's an
Very-
American.
exactly,
con-
it's not.
It's an
So
American concentration
it.
camp,
It's
much
not.
like the internment of the Japanese Americans in World War II. Same kind of shit, right?
Well, the Japanese were American citizens that were taken out, whereas when there's children, like I have a 6-year-old son. If I took him with me to commit a crime, whether it was stealing a loaf of bread or trespassing, and I was arrested, the police would separate me. They wouldn't let me and my son hang out in jail together. That's not.
And you would
how the
say
law
that was okay. then.
Huh?
And you would say that would be okay.
And I never said that's okay.
Well,
just
that's
saying
what I'm trying to find
that's
out.
the law. But if you selectively choose one corner and pretend like it doesn't apply everywhere else, it becomes disingenuous. And that's why people are so aggrieved. And that's, I think, the point Gina was making in her tweet too, that like there's all this
And that's equivalent to firing an actor. Again, I'm trying to understand what kind of a comparison you're trying to make here.
nobody fired the other guy for tweeting a thing that showed like huddled people behind barbed wire in 1944, next to, kids in detention camps. Like, two things can be bad and not be the same.
Agreed, 100% agreed. Yep.
Okay. So
No,
but making a comparison on one side warrants firing and the other side doesn't. And it's not just this actor. I mean, I see it in comment sections, things on social media. I've seen people be like, oh, screenshot that. I'm looking him up. We're going to find his, employer and get them fired. I mean, this isn't just happening
Oh,
like
no,
to
not at all.
celebrities. It's
Not
happening
at all.
a lot of places, and it's
Like
I think
the
it
link
makes
I
people
posted,
feel like they can't express themselves, because if you can't speak freely, you can't really think freely. So
The
it's
link
not
I
about being
posted
right
in
or
the
wrong. It's
chat.
about you should be able to speak freely.
There
And
is
I did mine.
the University of Edinburgh is renaming a building that was named for David Hume because heaven forbid a 19th century Brit was racist. Well, guess what? Pretty much all 19th century Brits were racist, right? That was how that era was. And so they want to rename the building and strip Hume's name from it. And that, I think, is absurd. I think holding things against
that
people-
kind of thing makes no sense. I agree. I mean, people are saying that. You know what? I've read that they're like Disney. What is it like? Disney is being a hypocrite because Walt Disney himself had some racist views in the
Oh, I'm
past.
sure. Yeah.
I mean, yes, but it's also, it was the 60s, people like express themselves in a very different way. And the guy has been dead for, I don't know how many years, like 20 years or so.
Right.
So yeah, that kind of thing is also like pretty much.
And then there was the whole James Gunn thing, right? That one was just weird about how that went down.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I think that there's a lot to talk about this cancel culture and how, some of the pernicious effects that it has. because it's, it's way overblown. Things are way overblown. I think in this case in particular, I think that people are trying to defend something that is not really that cannot really be defendable.
Well, and like the young lady in the group in that chat mentioned, that one of the results that happens is when you do this thing, all it does is it kind of makes the person into a cultural icon and actually makes their position stronger than it was previously. And she's right. It will do that in many cases. And it's a tough trade-off. Right.
To your point about Hume, real quick before that's lost, and how they're renaming whatever they can, and your point that it really doesn't make any sense. I think you're right and wrong at the same time. It makes no sense.
Happens all the time.
Any sort of logical, like, how is this helpful? It really isn't. But it makes a lot of sense if you want to steal control of controlling the narrative and controlling history, controlling the past. People think, well, what's a big deal? It's just the name of something else. But that's how it starts, renaming this stuff, and then certain books get canceled.
So when you say
we're going down that road.
When you say that, who exactly is doing the stealing?
Yeah, we have to be careful
thieves
about
here?
Generalizations, because that's, I think that's kind of like the problem that a lot of these societal conversations have these days, is that people, since there are so many people involved, people have to like bring it down to the lowest denominator, to the most simple things possible. But then you get lost into like broad generalizations, like they are doing this, they are doing that, like those are the bad people.
I would say anybody who is campaigning so viciously to rename buildings and streets and tear down monuments has an agenda. The consequences of their actions are beyond what they purport to cause. Like, what whitewashing history doesn't absolve it or take it away.
Yeah,
Which
I think
seems to me it's happening.
I personally think that you have to look at people relative to the rest of the population at the time. So, like, if all Brits were racist 200 years ago, I don't know if we can be like any building named after a Brit, we should take it down, because that kind of puts away any of the positive things they may have done. Like, I think you have to make it relative to the values at that time. I don't know if that sounds really bad, but that's kind of my view.
No, I think that makes total sense, man. I mean,
Now,
it's the
I
common
think
thing.
for me the problem is, how far do you go? Like here locally in Asheville, North Carolina, we have a monument to Cyrus, or not Cyrus Vance. Well, maybe it is Cyrus Vance, but it's a guy who was a Civil War officer of some kind for the South, and they have a monument to him in the public square on public land. And people want to take it down or rename it, for me personally, I think that the stars and bars and anything about the South does not belong on public property. Doesn't mean it couldn't be in a museum, but we don't fly the rising sun over Pearl Harbor.
But did that general do anything other than be a general for the South?
No, let me finish making my point.
Okay, yeah.
The problem with that is how far do you go? Because Asheville is named after a former governor of North Carolina, Samuel Ashe, who was a slave owner. And in fact, the winner of Wimbledon, Arthur Ashe, is descended from members of a family that was owned by Samuel Ashe. So, do we rename Asheville? Recently we heard some people who had a problem with Columbus, and I think that's fine. He probably was not the same kind of person a 21st century person is. But does that mean we rename the Statue of Liberty? Because her name is Columbia. I'm just, how far do we go?
I don't think we can go too far, right? Because if we start going too far, then we have to cancel everything.
Well, the problem is who decides how far we go?
Whoever's angriest and loudest
Who
and has the most
decides?
Twitter followers, that's
Who
the precedent that we
decides?
set with cancel culture.
Well, it's a crazy idea, but maybe a good idea to a good norm for these things would be to use some common sense, as drastic as a concept that might be.
Yeah, I think it's just a judgment call. I mean, I guess whoever puts up the statue or the voters or, whoever works on the budget for that decides. But yeah, the voters can vote them out. But I mean, in general, I think we should all just use our judgment. If it was someone from a long time ago and they had some values that aren't considered acceptable today, but they were acceptable at the time, should we cut them more slack because it was 200 years ago? I would say yes.
I understand, and I agree with that 100%. To me, the problem is people who believe that if a person owned slaves, there were no redeeming qualities about that person that merits a monument or a name.
I mean, what about Abraham Lincoln? I mean, he was a slave owner, right? So yeah, you have to use your judgment, right? I mean, like if Abraham Lincoln created like the whole war to end slavery, but he had a couple slaves. I mean, today that would be terrible that he had any at all. But like, yeah, I think you have to look at it relative to the time.
I
right?
don't think he had any slaves, but he did say some racist things.
Yeah, I think even his justification for ending slavery was a little racist in itself, because he kind of said,
But
like when he was talking about ending slavery, he said, just because they're intellectually inferior to us, does that mean that we should still subject them to slavery? So in that justification itself, there was kind of a hint of it. But I don't think, we should just remove Abraham Lincoln from everything positive because he said that. I think we have to look at.
I agree with what
the abolitionist movement
but
itself.
it may be that he was trying to persuade people of his position, and that's what spoke to them.
So he didn't actually believe that, maybe, but he thought.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
maybe.
know, but that's certainly a possibility, especially when you're talking about Abraham Lincoln, because he was very savvy in political matters.
Yeah, no, I love Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, I don't want to take him down from our statues, but yeah.
It's if we're gonna take down everyone who had slaves, then we have to take down pretty much everyone from the ancient world as well, and a great deal of people from the Middle Ages, from the modern world. I mean,
the Greek philosophers.
I mean, slavery was abolished in the 19th century, like 19th century. It's pretty recent.
And to me, there is no more glaring example of the principle that making laws is not enough. Because if you want people to be or act or conduct themselves in a certain way, a law is not going to make them do it. Only persuasion will make them do it. And the trouble It's not that we shouldn't have laws. We should. Sometimes that's the catalyst, but we always have to persuade. You know, that's true of the Emancipation Proclamation and the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Go ahead.
No, me, I'm just going to unshut up for a minute. And I'm just going to bring out the one thing that I really have against cancel culture, because it sounds like I've been probably defending it to people, and that's not entirely true, is that I find it to be very intellectually lazy. And the way I mean that is, hey, I can listen to people who have ideas that are different from mine, and I can learn from them. Or I can just stick my fingers in my ears and say, la, 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 I can't hear you. And that's basically what cancel culture does, is it's the equivalent of sticking one's fingers in one's ears or one's head up one's butt, maybe occasionally. And that annoys me greatly. And that's what I dislike most about that particular movement. It's
not just sticking it in your own ears. They want to stick it in everybody's
ears. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I don't like that. That's wrong. And I'll shut up.
I don't know if I can describe this principle or not, and it may not be valid. If there's holes in it, you guys have to tell me. But even though there are times when an offensive word may drive home a point that one wishes to make, taken to an extreme, you run the risk of offending and likely shutting down the very person you're trying to persuade. And that doesn't make any sense to me. In other words, or learn from. Maybe it's somebody you're trying to learn from. But if effectiveness comes from knowing when to straddle the offensive line and when to disregard it, it likely requires more insight into human nature than I have demonstrated in the past. I sometimes think I know where the line is, but having been wrong about it many times, well, suffice to say, using history as a guide, the day I am 100% certain that I know how to straddle the offensive line is the same day that I find out I am not 100% certain.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are using the Capitol riots nowadays as justification for less tolerance of free speech. Like they're saying, look what happens when we tolerate. But I'm not sure personally how I feel about that argument, because even if we were more, it would have happened either way. I'm not sure if our policy on that would have affected whether or not it happened.
Free speech, in my view, free speech does not extend to inciting a riot.
Yeah.
It doesn't go that. It's like yelling fire in a crowded theater. You know, that's already wrong.
So like, what do you think about like,
Yeah, and just
What about the George Floyd riots? Like, I mean, there was never any talk about like, oh geez, like they're saying like fucking burn shit, burn. Like nobody ever talked about, geez, maybe we should limit the reach that some of these like pro anarchy activists have. Like that was never a conversation.
well, I think a lot of people criticize
I don't think
those
it should
excesses.
be. Like,
But I think a lot of people criticize those excesses, Jesse.
The mayor of Atlanta.
What?
The mayor of Atlanta.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people did. Like,
yeah,
I did personally. I mean, my neighbor did. I mean, a lot of people did. But it's obviously, I mean, I agree with you, David. I mean, not to speak of, that's a coup d'etat, right? When the president is inciting people to commit violence against people in the Capitol. I mean, that can be seen as, treason, but so that makes things a lot worse. But going back to the general point of, freedom of speech doesn't include everything. You can't expect to say whatever you want and have no repercussions. I mean, that's not even what freedom of speech means.
I guess the question is like, how immediate do the consequences need to be? So like, if you're inciting an insurrection right now, you could argue that everyone has the right to try to suppress that if possible. But what if the consequences, for example, what if the Capitol riots just happen and then it's like 2 weeks later and people are still posting different things on social media? You have the right to suppress that. And what if it's not? What if it's somewhat indirect? What if the language is kind of vague on whether or not they want to actually do it? Like, yeah, I guess there's a lot of judgment calls, I guess, and I'm not sure if there is a perfect answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's you gotta take a case by case, right? But there are some general principles one needs to abide by.
What really freaks me out is that nothing is the flow of information is hardly like democratized or unbiased that like your average probably person gets. I mean, people like to think like in the old days, like, all right, everybody sat and watched some show. They decided, oh, like Roseanne kissed a lesbian. We have to boycott this show. So, you know, the far right wrote a bunch of letters and threatened the sponsors and all that kind of thing. But it's like everybody was kind of watching. If anybody that watched that episode saw the same episode, now everybody has different news. Everybody is getting a totally different story. Like, and the channels that feed it are also, you know, have their own bias, whether it's within the algorithms or what they censor or don't censor. That it's not like it's like they can propose a question that's like it seems obvious, but it's like it can be lacking something so substantial that I don't know. It seems like people. Yeah, I'm kind of losing my thought there.
No, but I mean, we've covered that before. Like, that's definitely true. You know, it's a big problem in these conversations that people are getting different sets of facts. That's why, for example, in this case, we have a very clear statement by, you know, the way we started with Gina Carano, clear statement by her, you know, and clear statement by Disney, you know, and that really, ideally, that should be like what we would have in every conversation, right? In every debate, you know, you have the same facts and then they're open to interpretation to some extent, but at least you need to have the same reality. If people just have different realities, there's really not much to be said, right? There's no conversation that can be had.
Is this the real world?
Or is this just fantasy? Caught in a land no escape from reality. And never mind. Okay.
Yeah, so I think there's a question of, like Jesse brought up, are Republicans and Democrats treated equally on both ends? And I think that's one interesting question. And then there's the question of, in general, what's the level of tolerance we should have for certain kinds of speech? And should it vary how much should it vary according to the circumstances? So like, if the Capitol riots just happened yesterday, do we need to set a bigger curb than in, like, let's say a year or 2 years, for example? Or same with Black Lives Matter. Like, if we just had a bunch of riots yesterday, do we need to set the limits higher today than we would maybe a year from now?
I think it's all this trying to set limits that is there's no right, or I don't know. I think it gets so dangerous when you start setting like anything that's not like explicit call to violence, like, needs to go under like free speech, like the cost of freedom, like, in my opinion, because otherwise it just gets way too slippery and you can always find some reason to, you know, shut things down. And that's my.
And I think I'm generally on your end. So, and then there's the question of companies, because for example, like Disney, I'm not sure if necessarily they were so much against the free speech as they were looking at it from a financial perspective. So in situations like that, should companies be allowed to fire someone for things like that if they feel that it just might be bad for their PR, for example? Let's say they don't even disagree with her, but they just, let's say they're totally self-interested and they're thinking about their PR and their bottom line and whatever. Should they be allowed to fire an actress like that?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I don't know what the policy is on how, like, I think they can just fire everybody if they want to. Like these actors, I think there isn't really much protection for them. And I mean, they make millions of dollars, so they're probably okay. But
Well, they don't all make millions of dollars, Bruno's,
Well,
but they have
true.
contracts, and that's where it would get resolved, is what the status of the contract is, and they may wind up having to pay them off to buy off the contract to fire them.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. She probably has a contract, I'm guessing, of some sort.
They were going to do a whole spin-off show with her. She was very, very popular. I don't think it's just dollars and cents, because she was.
They were going to make a show just with her?
I think she was going to be part of like the spin-off. She was going to be a recurring character in like the spin-offs.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like the Rangers of the Republic or something like that.
Do you think it hurt them financially by getting rid of her? It didn't
Well,
help, is what you're saying.
I think that Disney wants to promote a certain image, and she was definitely not promoting that image, right? I mean, she was going pretty much against like what Disney's like putting forward. And yeah, they didn't want to be associated with her. That's for financial reasons, and I think, yeah, for PR reasons. So, I mean, it makes total sense, right? I mean, it makes total sense that they would fire her. Now, if they can fire people because they express their views or not, that's a different question. There's a legal aspect to it, which I don't think it makes even much sense for us to try to tackle it, because that's just about the rules that are already in place. But I mean, from what should be, what ought to be, I don't know. You can say that a company should have the right to fire someone if they're being an asshole, or if they're just like not promoting the values of the company, if they're doing the opposite. But then again, you could say, well, it's their personal life. They should be allowed to express whatever view they have, as idiotic as it might be, or as antagonistic as it might be. I don't know which one is right.
Well, I mean, if there's something in her contract that says like you're not allowed to, have divergent political views and express them on social media, then like she would be in, violation of her contract. I mean,
true, from a legal perspective, and they probably do have that because they're so smart, and not just smart. I mean, they pay a lot of lawyers, so I'm sure they're well protected. So, I mean, yeah, that's a good point. She probably has it in her contract even. So
it's also just it adds to just a general climate of fear. If somebody's like, geez, I feel like expressing something, but oh shit, what if it gets taken out of context, or somebody is just looking for something like to like get me? I better play it safe and keep my mouth shut. And I think that's the real purpose of firing her is like, and all this stuff is like.
And in other words, did she push the buttons or did they pull them in?
I think she went a little bit too far, right? Because she did this like repeatedly, and then she went, almost all out, comparing the treatment of conservatives to the treatment of Jews. I mean, she was very antagonistic from, if you look at it from Disney's perspective of like what values they're trying to put forward, either you agree with them or not. So I think in her case,
I mean, if you walked around, Minneapolis with a, with a Trump shirt or a MAGA, probably if you still would, you'd probably get the shit beat out of you. And they,
I don't know, yeah.
like, that has happened. Like, people have been assaulted, like on their way to Trump rallies, things like that. Like, it's
but
which is, violence against people for political reasons.
But it's very different. Do you really think it's the same?
Nobody said it's the same.
It's not the same.
She never said this is the same.
She said it was, how is that different? Which is kind of like saying it's the same. Those are her words.
Okay. There's a comparison going on right now between what she said and how people were treated in Nazi Germany. Is that what you guys are comparing?
Well, no, that's the comparison she made. That's why she got fired. I mean, that was like the last straw. There were a number of tweets, as I understand it. I wasn't really following this until I saw the news that she got fired and I read about it. But in the last tweet, she basically said, how is the treatment of conservatives in the United States today? How is that different from the treatment of Jews in Nazi Germany?
Did she ask or make a statement?
I think it was a rhetorical question. You can read the tweet. I've already read it.
I can read the tweet, but what does it say?
Well,
I'm actually just curious the exact verbiage.
Do I have it here? Let me.
Oh, you're just asking for Gina's tweet?
I'm really just wondering what you guys were just arguing about. I didn't see the two sides of that argument.
So do you want me to read the tweet?
Do you
Sure.
have it, Mike?
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Okay, yeah, I have it here too, but go ahead.
Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? That was the tweet. I could post it in the chat for, I'll post it in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, personally, like I said before, I think it's an absurd comparison. Like you said, Michael. I mean, it's.
What's the comparison? What is she comparing? Because she says a lot there.
Well, she's comparing the Jews in Nazi Germany to conservatives in the United States today.
I think she's comparing the treatment of them, which is a really fine semantic distinction. I understand, but I think her point is more along the lines of it starts by making us each other's enemy, right? Like the guards at the Nazi concentration camps, before they went to the concentration camps, those guys were regular old Joes. They were just cops, just like the same guys that we would meet on the side of the street. But at the end of the war, they were the guys that were killing and torturing and massacring Jews. And there's a journey from the point where they're just normal cops to the point where they're killing and massacring Jews. And I think what she's saying is that started by telling the population that their neighbors were evil.
Yeah, but that's kind of that's a big stretch, man. I mean, we're talking about a very persecuted people that were, that was the first stage of sending them to extermination camps. I mean, this was hardcore stuff, right? I mean, none of us was there, but I mean, imagine
but
being a Jew,
the point
at that point in that place and time. I mean, you were treated as a subhuman, you know. And even before that, well, Hitler made it worse, but it was already going on, and he made it worse and progressively worse. And his idea was it ended in the extermination camp. I mean, this was a very different degree, I think. And look, I'm against cancel culture in general. Like I'm just like referring to this particular example, this particular comparison to me is absurd because I think it's a very different degree here. It's not a very smart comparison, in my opinion. But if we're talking about the idea of just like canceling culture and looking for flaws in people and basically censoring what you can think just based on a certain dogma that people have been developing and that admits no contradiction, I mean, yeah, that's a completely different deal. And I think what we need to do is do what we're doing here, talk about things, see what has merit, what does not have merit, right? I think this is the path forward. Obviously, not everybody's going to talk about it, as friends, in a philosophical way, intellectual way, cordial way, but people can still try to rationalize things a little bit more instead of generalizing.
She said the government first made their own neighbors hate them. So she's talking about the very first step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's all she's talking about, Bruno, is that initial move that Marxists use when they're trying to alter a culture. You should look up some of the tactics the Russians use in the Cold War to subvert their own government. They have a whole playbook. And if you look at it, it takes about 30 years to change a culture, to alter a culture if you do the same things, if you do the right things. You guys might want to look into that because there's a lot of trends that are very similar to what we've been going through for the last 20 years.
Of course,
Who's talking
1920s
right now?
Germany and Italy were not Marxist, were they? Even close to
They
being
were
Marxist.
yeah, they were fascists, yeah. But tyranny takes over the same way.
It does, no matter what mask it puts on, right? Tyranny is underneath, always produces
There
the
you go.
same effects, it seems.
Yeah, the German fascists blamed the Jews and the communists, and then the communists blamed the capitalists and the Jews eventually too.
But
If you are,
sorry, go ahead.
I think I agree with, I just got kicked.
Can you repeat that? I think he dropped. I think he had a problem with his connection. But yeah, do you guys want to change the subject? Or hey, by the way, welcome Sashir. Welcome to the discussion.
Right.
Do you want to add anything about cancel culture before we move on, Sashir?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Do you want to add anything about our cancel culture conversation or about this Gina Carano thing before we move on?
I haven't seen Mandalorian, so I heard about it. I'm familiar with Gina Carano actually more from MMA than I am really from some of her movie stuff, but I'd heard she was making some kind of anti-Semitic remarks or anti-trans remarks.
Yeah. I had no idea. Like, I was very surprised when I read this because I only knew her from MMA as well. And I had seen some interviews with her in MMA. And also there's a pretty lengthy making of the Mandalorian on Disney Plus that I watched. And she seemed like such a sweet girl. She seemed like very personable and reasonable. It was weird when I saw that she was making these remarks and writing all those tweets. I thought I thought it was kind of weird. It wasn't really what I imagined. That I didn't think she should have those ideas.
I think we have to be aware too. There's different contexts of canceling someone. There's firing them from a job. there's taking down a social media post, then there's preventing them from giving a talk, let's say on a college campus. So there's different ways of doing it. And I don't know if all of them should be treated the same, really.
Or just
Yeah,
killing them. Or
I
killing them. That
I
would-
understand what you're saying, but I think the bigger challenge, which comes first, is to identify what should be canceled and what shouldn't. What comments merit canceling a person?
But I think it matters the canceling in what way. Like maybe there's something that they could be a post taken down, but they shouldn't be fired for. Maybe there's something that we would not allow them to give a talk, but we wouldn't fire that. I guess there's different ways of canceling people, I think, and maybe in certain situations some would be merited, but not the other.
Is anyone here fans of The Expanse?
I haven't seen it, man. Sorry.
I watched a few episodes, and a friend of mine told me that near the end of the second season, it gets to be a lot more interesting. And I thought, you don't get 14 hours to get me interested.
I think the same way when people tell me, hey, you just got to get through the first season and then it starts getting good. It's like, well, I don't know if I want to, spend, I don't know how many hours, 10 hours just waiting for it to start to get good.
But I like the storyline of the episodes that I saw, exploring the solar system and, there's something between where we are now and exploring the galaxy. And that's probably exploring the solar system.
Well, one of the actors on The Expanse is being canceled. He's Cass Anvar, who plays Alex on The Expanse, is being taken off the show apparently because he's been I don't think he's been sexually assaulting, but it sounds like he's been sexually harassing. He's been treating fans, particularly female fans at conventions. He's been basically trying to use his fame to get sexual favors and stuff. So they're taking him off the show. And he's one of the main characters too. He's been with the show since the beginning.
There's a lot of those cases. Joss Whedon, now it just came out. Joss Whedon, apparently he's a grade A asshole, and there's a lot of people that are coming out against him that apparently he abused his power on set a lot. And people just didn't talk about it because they were afraid of getting fired.
There's Bryan Singer, who is director of a bunch of the X-Men movies, who had been accused of sexual harassment. And he's apparently back. He wasn't completely canceled.
Yeah, I mean, so some of those people deserve to. I don't know if they deserve to get canceled, but I do think that if you're routinely abusing your power, chronically abusing your power, throughout 20 years, and you're making people's lives a living hell. I mean, people. They should be entitled to some dignity, right? Even if they're an actor. I mean, just because you're under the power of the director doesn't mean they can treat you in any way they want to. So I think in other industries, it would be okay to fire that person, right? If they're just being complete assholes to their employees.
Well, I think part of the issue with like Gina Carano is both for like The Mandalorian, and if you look at The Expanse, was that a lot of the behavior of Cass Anvar, the guy from The Expanse, was at conventions. And because conventions, I think, have become so much a part of these shows, and so much as part of the moneymaker and the advancing of the shows, is that if you didn't get rid of Gina Carano, basically at the next convention, if she was there, yeah, she would be getting booed from people in the audience. But also every member of the cast would just be peppered with questions about what are you gonna do about her.
So Sashir, I have a quick question. I have not yet watched The Mandalorian either. Would you characterize it as a show that's kind of also aimed at children? Like
I don't know. I haven't watched
Star Warsy stuff. Okay. Anybody who has watched it, would you say like other Star Warsy stuff, it's kind of aimed at kids too?
I watched 2 or 3 episodes, and it was just a little too episodic. In other words, it was kind of like have gun will travel, and
I remember Paladin.
in a real sense, I started to wonder, how would I feel if I personally interacted with a guy who always wore a mask? And I'm not talking about COVID mask. I'm talking about a helmet that hides your identity totally.
I'm saying it's a hero for our time.
You gotta be
But
you gotta be a good actor to play that part.
how would I feel about carrying on a conversation with a guy with a helmet that obscured his face? I don't think I would like that.
I mean, if you're getting paid thousands of dollars per
Well,
minute to do it,
I'm not talking about how the actors are paid. I'm talking about my interest in the story is partly governed by how I perceive the characters that are portrayed. And I can't escape that.
I don't know if I don't know exactly why you want to know, Craig, if it's just like for children, if it's good. I mean, I watched the whole thing.
Well, my point being is that they would probably care more about her position as a role model if the show was also being marketed to kids, right? And that could be another part of Disney's motivation for doing what they did.
I think it's absolutely part of it. I think she is being looked at as a role model because she was they are in that show. I don't know if it's a conscious thing. I think it is a conscious thing. They are promoting strong women in that show. There's a lot of strong women in that show, more than strong men, really. I mean, numerically. So I think she was the main face of that in that show. Like everybody was like, look at this woman. I mean, she could probably kick his ass. I mean, she really could because she's a former MMA fighter and she's probably like stronger than him just physically. She's like a tank of a woman. But she was like she was like that girl that the warrior queen, or what was she called? Xena.
You're thinking of Lucy Lawless, who I see that there are things where people are recommending that Lucy Lawless be hired as her replacement.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, she's like the same kind of character,
Yeah, I mean, Lucy is probably 20 some years older, but yeah.
Oh yeah, but I mean, everybody gets old, right? I mean, she's the Lucy.
I've heard rumors. Yeah,
she's the Lucy Lawless of today, basically. So she got really popular, and yeah, she was the role model. Look at this woman; she's so powerful, strong. And now you have this public personality that they were trying to send certain message, and all of a sudden they get this woman that is tweeting anti-mask stuff, making these I don't want to go into specific. I know she tweeted like some anti-mask stuff that was pretty aggressive, but I don't know all the other stuff. But basically, I don't think Disney was expecting this PR. I think this was something that they just simply weren't anticipating.
If I can paraphrase, and I don't know if I can, but if I can, you wouldn't have Larry Flint as a guest on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. I think that's kind of like what happened to them.
What's ironic is Disney itself. I mean, Walt Disney was a virulent anti-Semite.
Yeah, we've already talked about, but so what I said before was that is true, but look, we are talking about something that happened a long time ago when people's values were different and it was just a different society. I'm not defending him or anything, but it's very difficult. I don't know how long he's been dead for. I think 20 years or something like that. I might be wrong here, but a long time. So I don't know. I don't think it's the right thing to just like dig people up and dig up what they said in the 60s and compare it to what people find acceptable now in general. I just don't think that's a correct thing to do.
Well, I don't think it was public knowledge that Walt Disney was an anti-Semite. I mean, anti-Semitism, there was probably more of it, but it wasn't exactly something that was, especially during World War II. I mean, I think what I think
But
is
a lot of people were, Sashir. A lot of people, like Jewish people, weren't widely accepted in American society in the 30s. You know, it wasn't just Germany.
Oh no, a lot of people were. Yeah, I'm saying there was more anti-Semitism, but I'm saying Walt Disney for most of his life, even during World War II, was still an anti-Semite. I mean, I'm saying most people didn't know that this wasn't widespread public knowledge. And I think what's different now is our kind of view of actors and celebrities. We kind of pry more into their lives. They have much more of a public face. And with shows like The Mandalorian, part of the selling point of it is getting to know the actors. And that's why stuff like conventions, social media is playing such a large role in kind of marketing these shows. Whereas, 50 years, or not even 50 years ago, 30 years ago, no one would really care that much. Well, I wouldn't say they would not care, but it just wouldn't be as much of an issue.
That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, they are expected, especially in that business. You're absolutely right. I think they are expected to do that now. They weren't before because they just didn't have the chance, like how would you do that, but now, yes, all of these guys, they have social media platforms that I don't know how many followers she has on Twitter, but I'm guessing it's, in the tens of thousands, so Disney is expecting, we pay you, but you promote the show, it's not because she's the best actress in the world. It's because she has a certain platform.
And as kind of a corollary to all that, one of the great fascinating and maybe messed up things of our era is just how much of a microscope everybody's life is put under and subjected to. And I doubt that any of us really truly could withstand having our lives subjected to that kind of a microscope. I know I couldn't.
Yeah, it's difficult.
That's actually, I think, a more interesting and more serious problem than even cancel culture, because I think cancel culture is just kind of a symptom of the more underlying thing of everybody being scrutinized with microscopes. I don't know if there's anything much to do about that at this point, but.
Yeah, I don't know either. But I mean, that's another really good point. Yeah. And I think that's true for even like private individuals. I mean, she is a private individual, but she's, has a big following and she appears on TV and everything. But so it's a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, everybody now, I mean, even if you're not an actor, yeah, I mean, everybody has some sort of imprint on the internet, and you're being looked at. Whereas before, you kind of knew, who was looking at you, but now you don't know. Yeah.
And curiously, we have all made mistakes in our past, and like if we're lucky, we were smart enough to learn from those mistakes. But that means that going back and judging us by those mistakes that we made before we learned from them may not be such a helpful thing to do.
That's kind of like, that reminds me of the case of the person's daughter from that restaurant who they got kicked out of Midtown for something she posted on the internet like 8 years ago.
Oh, Holy Land Deli. Yep.
That's insane.
Yeah.
It's like the James
it
Gunn
brings
thing.
up
I think
an interesting issue. Like, like what if like something you posted on the internet at 14 came back to haunt you?
He wasn't 14, the James Gunn thing, but it was kind of
No,
I know.
The Holy Land case.
Yeah, but even that guy, that director that got fired, I mean, he was fired because he posted something from 2000 or something like that. It was like a long time ago. I mean, yeah, look, everybody has said stupid things at some point. Like after we do 100 of these podcasts, I can be fired like repeatedly from, for the rest of my life, probably, for the stuff that I say. I mean, I'm going to say some stupid stuff. Everybody who's online is going to say some stupid stuff.
Well, I work very hard now to only say things that I actually mean. So if something comes back and bites me because of it, I'm ready to either change my mind or to stand by what I said and take the biting if that's what it amounts to. Because I'm old, I can afford to do that, I guess.
Well, you're wise. You're
Oh, is that what you call it? Okay.
You're much wiser. So like, I don't claim to be as wise as you, so I'll probably say a lot of stupid stuff, but most people will.
There was a story from like a year ago or 2 years ago, where at ESPN College Game Day was at I think Ames, Iowa, and so somebody held up this sign saying I need money for Bud Light or something, and he put his Venmo number on. And it was like a student at Iowa State, and he ended up people ended up sending him like $1 million or some like huge amount of money. And so he ended up donating it to the Iowa State Children's Hospital. But a reporter for the Des Moines Register, like their social media reporter, dug up that this guy, he was like 21 at the time. When he was like 16, had made these like racist tweets.
That's crazy. Like, why is that even relevant?
Oh, except what happened was somebody else dug up that the same reporter, who was also like 24, had also, when he was like 16 and 17, also made racist tweets. He ended up getting fired from his job. The guy who had done, the guy who had been Venmo me for beer ended up, becoming basically like this hero, kind of fighting against cancel culture. A lot of people said, oh, okay, well, but...
Oh, this Gina Carano actually got hired by Ben Shapiro now, which is like
I believe that.
a new
I can
twist.
believe that. What's going to happen is she's now going to go. I'm going to put another spin on this, because part of what Craig was talking about being under a microscope. I read this New Yorker article like a few weeks ago, but it was talking about stolen valor. And this idea of people who pretend to be veterans so what happened was in Texas, there was an election between two candidates running for sheriff, and sheriff's an elected position, a county position. So one guy had come out and claimed, and he had posted all this stuff saying, I was an Army Ranger and I had, done combat and all this stuff. And he kind of made that. So apparently his opponent had also said, well, I was in the military, but I don't really talk about it much. I was a Ranger too. So apparently the first guy, somebody had dug up and said, no, you weren't a Ranger. Yeah, you were in the military, but you weren't a Ranger. You didn't even see combat. And so forcing this guy to drop out. But then later on, it turns out the second guy also hadn't been an Army Ranger either.
Oh boy.
And so one could argue the kind of point of this was the kind of search, the stolen valor, was that, yeah, we're putting these people on a microscope because too many people are lying about their background, particularly about having been a veteran.
Yeah. Man.
Well, of course, you're talking politicians there. So by definition, you must assume that they are lying, right? I mean, they opened their mouths, therefore they lied. That's the nature of that business, but in my humble opinion.
Well, right, and that's a generalization, but at the same time, I'm sure there are plenty of politicians who don't. I mean, how are you as a voter supposed to actually assess somebody? I mean, you just gonna say we're both are liars, so therefore I'm just not going to participate in the political process. Unfortunately, you just get what you deserve.
You value some lies more than others. I mean, right? That's how you do it. That's how it's done in practice, I think.
I think it was Benny Hill he asked his mother, how can you tell which politician is lying? And she said, the one whose mouth is moving.
Sad but true.
Oh boy. It's yeah, I mean it's a little bit sad that things are like that, but I mean
Right.
there must be where there's smoke, there's fire, right? That's what they say.
Right. In
Well, you
terms
know-
of the stolen valor argument, though, the argument is that this actually, because you are one, it's actually a crime, I think, to declare, say you're in part of the military, you weren't, but it's basically they're saying because you're what they call a stolen valor at that point.
Well, how does that differ from what Brian Williams did?
Brian Williams claimed to have been under fire, claimed to have his helicopter had been shot when actually it was a helicopter in front of him. That was one that was kind of magnified because he was a media member, and again, people like, I don't think it was Ben Shapiro in particular, but people like that really kind of went after him or that.
Shit. Man, these politicians. Have you guys ever read Walden? I'm reading Walden now. I'm really liking it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a really cool book by Thoreau. Have you guys read it?
40 years ago.
Yeah, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, I read it a while ago, but it's a good book.
Yeah, I really like the idea of just going into basically into the wild or into the countryside and living your own life and devoting most of your time to studying in a more detached way, studying just society and life and the classics and all that, and just living a simpler life. And I think it's a really interesting book.
Well, you could join a monastery, Bruno, and try to get that. I mean, that is how people do it these days, I think.
Yeah, the idea of going to a monastery doesn't really appeal to me, unless it's
or they become survivalists in Montana compounds and wait for the FBI to come, or whatever.
No, those are the crazy people. I think Thoreau did it right. You got to go by yourself and just you and nature, and you build your own house, and you study, you think about life. It's a little bit different, but Kerouac used to do like similar things. He would go also in some of his books, like the Dharma Bums. I think he did something very similar, and he's one of my favorite writers. So Thoreau is kind of like a similar thing, but obviously different time, 19th century.
Speaking of canceling, I've read critiques of Thoreau where basically pointing out that he actually wasn't really that isolated and really wasn't roughing it that much.
I don't know, man.
I've actually been to
how would they
Walden.
know?
I've seen where his house is.
So Walden is the pond, right?
Yep, it's outside of Boston.
Yeah. So I don't know where Michael went, but he wanted to talk about humor in society, the role of humor in society. But maybe we should wait until he comes back. Oh, he's here. Hey,
Sorry, I was just doing something else.
I summoned Michael. So Michael, do you want to talk about? So what's interesting about that to you? What's interesting about the issue of like humor and what makes people laugh and the role of humor in society?
I guess what's interesting about it is that I'm not sure why people laugh. Like, why did we evolve? You could think of it about it evolutionarily. Why did we evolve that capability? And yeah, what's the point of it? Something I've never really thought of a clear answer to it.
This reminds me of one theory I've heard before, like that all humor is somehow related to suffering or something along those lines, which I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it does sort of seem like humor could kind of be a psychological mechanism for alleviating suffering.
And it's hard to understand what's adaptive about humor.
What's a stress reliever, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you can't be sitting worrying about getting eaten by a bear 24 hours a day. You got to do something else with your time, and otherwise your body will collapse under the stress. And so, hey, you start telling fart jokes to your neighbor, and there you are.
But there's got to be, I don't think that in and of itself could explain it, because I mean, there's got to be a better evolutionary way than telling fart jokes, right? Like if you're under stress, then maybe your body should just have a mechanism that just undoes the stress. But why telling jokes, or why do we laugh at what it is that we do laugh at? Or yeah.
I think apes laugh, right? I mean, other apes, I believe they laugh. Chimpanzees, right? They have that big laugh, Tom Cruise laugh.
Oh, absolutely.
All the teeth. So I think maybe it's just a ape-like thing.
But what does it do for the ape? What does it do for any species? Like, what is it?
Yeah. I mean, because I don't think lions or tigers, or dogs laugh. I think it might be just apes or a very select number of animals. I think Carolyn brought up a good point. Maybe it breaks up the tension, or it regulates emotion. We're extremely social, right? A lot more than lions, say. Lions are somewhat social, but like apes, you can't survive by yourself, right? Because there are lions and tigers and those kinds of animals, and apes are not that strong compared to those animals. So we're like extremely social because we depend on each other to survive. And I think if you're laughing, sometimes I think that can be a very good social instrument, right? Oh, he's laughing. Okay, we can be buddies, like he's not an enemy, right? And maybe, look, now I can tell you, Michael, it's okay. I mean, I don't want to beat you up, or I don't want you to beat me up, like, let's chill, But back then, I mean, when I say back
I don't want to beat you up either, Michael.
Yeah, so it's cool, Michael.
I do, but sure.
Well, it's a good thing we're on Zoom.
Gotta learn martial arts. Yeah.
I always want to beat people up.
Yeah, that's how you live, man.
But then the next question is,
that's how I'm going to get canceled.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But just to finish my point, Michael, but when people couldn't talk, when they had no language, maybe that's how they showed, that they were okay with each other. I mean, this is just, me speculating.
Check out the quick little video about the chimp watching the magic trick that I posted to YouTube in there. It's pretty freaking hilarious. And if we wonder about, do primates laugh, you'll get a good show there.
You guys are writing so much here in the comments and sharing so many videos. I'm just gonna spend like half an hour after we're done with this, just going through everything, because there's a lot at this point.
Yeah, Bruno, what you said a minute ago reminds me. My dad said he was listening to something about why we laugh, and they noted. It's interesting to note it is a pretty primal sound. Someone laughing.
Yeah, like babies laugh a lot.
But laughter seems like it's more than just to show that you're friendly with someone. That may be one of the purposes. But like when a comedian is telling us a story, everyone just starts laughing. What is it that makes it funny? That's what I find interesting.
I'm trying to remember. Didn't Aristotle have a theory on humor in addition to his theory on drama? I think it had to do with paradox, but I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, a lot of times I think we laugh at things that look absurd or like totally, incongruous or, but yeah, why? I don't know. Like, why don't we just act confused, or why don't we just say, oh, that doesn't make sense, or,
Well, I mean, the ancient Greeks had comedy and drama were the only two forms of theater.
Like if I think about.
Go ahead, Carol.
If I think about things that are funny, like if it's totally nonsensical, then it's not really funny, but there's sort of, like if I think about examples of something funny happening, there's sort of like a double meaning, so to speak. Or like some.
Yeah, sometimes language can be funny. Like when someone uses a word in a way that it's not intended to. I see comedians do that a lot. Like something's funny just because they used a word in a context that it's not usually used in or something.
Or when people make up a word and you understand what it means the very first time you hear it.
Yeah.
That is such like a fundamental question, Michael. Like, why do people laugh? It's like, so like we laugh, right? We never think about why we laugh, you know? So I'm going to have to like think about this today. You know, I'm going to go to bed thinking about like, I have to watch a sitcom and try not to laugh and understand why I laughed in the past, right? I've never thought about this.
And
Like,
then
why do I
sometimes
laugh?
like people get canceled for making jokes, and humor changes over time too. That's interesting, you know.
It does change over time.
But then people also,
There was a time, maybe a couple of 100 years ago, where a form of entertainment was taking a bag of cats and setting it on fire.
Ouch.
A bag of what? Cats?
A bag of cats,
Well, cruelty is funny.
living animals.
That
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that sounds horrific. I don't know if
It
that
sounds
would ever
terrible
be
to
funny.
me, but
Well, yeah.
at one time that was a form of entertainment. I don't know if it was humorous
Was it really?
entertainment,
I
but
mean,
it was
where?
some form of entertainment, you know.
Well, there are things analogous to that today, like bullfighting and cockfighting.
Yeah, but you don't laugh. Like bullfighting is a spectacle that people like, but they don't, you know, they don't laugh, you know. They don't laugh when the bullfighter gets killed
This kind of does relate though to what I said about
or the bull gets killed.
well, like there's a theory of humor that humor is related to suffering, which sometimes if someone gets or like if something bad happens, it's kind of funny depending on how you frame it.
Well, cruelty is definitely funny to some people.
Well, a lot of physical comedy
reason.
is based on just that sort of thing, right? Whether you look at things like the Three Stooges or whether you look at the Dick Van Dyke Show, which I
Like when
am following again since because of WandaVision. But you know, there are a lot of things where people tripping over furniture and stuff like that were considered horribly funny back then.
you're making a good point. Like when people are getting hurt, that's when we find it funny. Like look at Jackass, right? Jackass is like extreme people getting extremely hurt and people laughing about it.
Well, there's a man getting hit by football.
Wile E.
Mhm.
Coyote and the Roadrunner.
Oh,
Oh
absolutely.
yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. That's an even better example.
And I wonder if the reason why that's so darn funny is because we look at it and in our we laugh because we're glad it's not us.
See, I found that funny. Why? Why did I find that funny? You know,
Well, you're
There-
weird. I don't know.
I'm weird, but
Yeah, you're a weird guy.
funny. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, about a year ago, I was reading some of the original Norse myths, and there's one section where one myth about Loki entertaining the rest of the gods, and he does stuff like he ties his testicles to a goat,
Ouch.
and then the goat runs around and it's like dragging him by, and all the gods just laugh uproariously.
Oh, that Loki.
Look, there are several things that are funny. it
You know,
seems.
there's one
of them
visual
is
I
seeing
don't
people get
want.
hurt. Seeing people get hurt seems to be funny.
I'm disappointed that was left out of the Marvel Thor movies. I mean,
Yeah, no
Oh,
kidding.
yeah.
Yeah,
That should have
Tom
been included with
Hiddleston
Tom
would have
Hiddleston.
pulled that off really well.
But when people get really hurt, it's not funny. Like I think
You know,
it's only-
to do something like that takes real balls.
oh my god, that was not funny.
Ooh, that was not bad.
That
Dave.
cancel
Oh my
worthy?
god.
Actually, when I got hurt, when I broke my ankle, and after I dragged myself into the house and got my leg propped up, I laughed at myself for a while for being so silly to not bother looking for ice as I was going out looking for my dog and trip and fall and hurt myself so grievously. So yeah, actually, sometimes hurting for real can be funny too.
Well, whenever I fall, Beth has a laugh attack. And she's laughing right now. Because she heard me. So yeah, I mean, when people fall, other people tend to find it's funny unless they think that person's really hurt.
Well, I mean, I knew I had broken my ankle.
Oh, she
And-
just said, or when you bump into stuff. So when I bump into stuff, she also
Oh,
finds
yeah.
it very funny.
Yeah, I think I could hear her laughing in the background.
She's laughing in
Mhm.
the background right now. So she finds this funny.
Well, there's such a thing as Schadenfreude, of taking pleasure in other people's misery.
I found that funny. I don't know, Michael. This is a really weird question, man.
I like the unusual questions. Yeah, that's why
I
asked.
really like this question though.
I
don't
like
know.
the
I
question
think
as
it
well.
relates to like cancel culture too. If you think about it, because there have been a lot of comedians who say a lot of jokes in the past now are in trouble, and some comedians who have made certain jokes are getting in trouble. And then there's also like dark humor. If you look at like Deadpool, or if you guys even
Mhm.
watch like the Office show, right? Some of the jokes there would never fly now, right? But
It's true, and even like I watch the only comedy show that I really watch these days is The Big Bang Theory, and I haven't watched it recently, but I used a couple of months ago I was always watching it, and that was what 10 years ago that they were making that. If it ended, I think a couple of years ago. A lot of those jokes today, like in this cancel culture environment, wouldn't be accepted. So yeah, definitely the bar for what you can say seems to be changing.
In fact, I think I read an article once making the argument to cancel Big Bang Theory back when it was on by pointing
There you go.
out about how sexist the male characters are in it.
Which I mean, that's ridiculous, but yeah.
They actually kind of changed the format later on when they brought in the female characters. Because like the first season, I think there was only one female character.
Yeah, the first season was the four guys and Penny, the girl.
Well, my favorite
And now
example.
they have, like now
Go
they
ahead.
have female scientists on there.
Well, not now because
Like,
they're not making it now, but yeah, in posterior seasons they added 3 or 4 girls. 2 or 3 girls, I should say. Yeah. Depending on who you think is important or not. But yeah, there's at least 2 girls that get added and become like a key part of the cast. So it goes from 4 guys and 1 girl. It goes from 4 to 4 guys and 3 girls as the key members of the cast.
Oh,
I wonder if laughter is like a way of your brain being overwhelmed. Because it's like a lot of times, like in a sitcom, you're focused on one thing, and then all of a sudden something else really random out of the blue happens, and then you start laughing. It's like your attention was like your attention is like divided between 2 different things, and your brain is having trouble, focusing on both of them at once, so you just start laughing. It's almost like a computer that just is overloaded. I don't know.
Like making fun of someone also seems to be a form of a very common form of humor. Like when you look at something like Stephen Colbert, for example, and I did used to enjoy Stephen Colbert, but if you like, the only thing that he did for the most part was making fun of Trump or the Republicans for like 4 years, or I don't know how many years. And that's just an example of a lot of those guys. They tend to make fun of people. Like that's even if it's not Republicans. I mean, they need to find someone who they're gonna make fun of. And the same thing is true for like stand-up comedy. A lot of those acts are about just making fun of someone. I don't know why we find that.
But not
funny,
all of them
but
are.
we do.
Like Jerry Seinfeld, his acts are truly like not offensive to anyone. A lot of them don't even involve people. Like he'll just talk about like stock or like
Jerry
raisins.
Seinfeld will no longer do colleges. He will no
yeah.
longer perform at a college because
Seinfeld?
so many people find his stuff offensive.
Who's that?
Really?
Jerry Seinfeld.
I thought his stuff is like less offensive than you could possibly get. Like he talks about a big salad. He goes,
My
how big?
opinion too. My opinion too. But apparently not the opinion of many of the college crowds that he played to.
If you watch Seinfeld today, I mean, there's so much stuff today that people would look at it and say, oh, that's super politically incorrect. I don't find it politically incorrect, but I can understand that people would, go crazy about it today, but it wasn't that long ago. It was the 90s. We're talking about the 90s here, but there has been a substantial change.
Political correctness is another form of that microscope I was talking about. And it has much the same kind of chilling effects as being under a microscope all the time. But I'm kind of curious to know, because my 4 great stand-up comedians of my life, actually 5 when I think about it, but were like George Carlin, Richard Pryor, Robin Williams, Whoopi Goldberg, and amazingly enough, from when I was a kid, a fellow by the name of Bill Cosby, who was an absolutely hilarious stand-up comedian. And I'm curious, I guess we know where Cosby sits these days. I'm curious what people think the views on the other 4.
I definitely think George Carlin would not fly now. He has said, like certain jokes that I don't think that would be. I think he would be canceled from colleges, or in many things.
Well,
Why?
Oh, everything he said was crazy.
Yeah. It's not like that. I don't think. I think he's a bad dude. It's the way that I just think that the jokes that he has made in the past are offensive, and to those folks, and they don't think of it as a joke, and then they would try to cancel him because of that.
Yeah, you're probably right. No, I think the thing about Carlin was, of course, his jokes were deliberately offensive. He knew what he was. He knew what he was doing, and he knew how to make it work. There.
Yeah, he did.
And I feel like when it's very explicit, it almost hurts less than when it's subtle. Like people get very offended when you say something that's subtly offensive, more so than when you say something really direct, almost. Yeah.
Well, that's true.
George Carlin, to me, his best stuff was not when he was trying to be obscene. His best stuff was, when he was talking about the United States government or religion, and he got a little cynical, in his later years, but overall, he was brilliant. I think.
I love him. I think he's awesome.
He was a social commentator.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Dennis Leary was kind of George Carlin's heir. You could almost say Dave Chappelle is kind of George Carlin's heir too. But one thing about
the tradition just goes back to the likes of Twain and Mencken and George Bernard Shaw and all of that, a lot of the best social commentary is expressed through comedy, because if you just come out and say it, they'll do more than cancel you in those days. They'd put you up in the gallows or do equivalent nasty things to you. So it had to be delivered under the guise of comedy to be acceptable.
Oh yeah, that's true. That goes back to Aristophanes.
Sure.
But one thing about Cosby, though, what's interesting is, because I remember seeing a documentary about kind of the history of and they talked about Cosby, but why Cosby got big in the 60s was because he didn't talk about race. Because there were other black comedians who were talking about race, but he avoided race as an issue, and he essentially became more palatable to a white audience, and that's why he got TV roles like I Spy and stuff like that, because he was essentially the non-threatening black man.
There was a lady named Althea Gibson that won Wimbledon in the mid-50s, 55 or 56 or something like that. And she was a black woman, and she won Wimbledon. She was not even allowed to use the restroom in the clubhouse at Wimbledon, and she still won. And Jackie Robinson visited her once and encouraged her to make more of an issue of her race. And she says, I just want to play tennis as good as I can. I think people will notice if I'm black. And
People notice.
I think that was a good attitude.
Yeah.
Right, but if why the Cosby Show was so big in the '80s too was also it touched upon race. But it wasn't a theme. But the whole idea was this presentation of a black family that had not been seen before. It was almost this idea that this upper middle class black family is as successful as any white family. And it's kind of been an interesting kind of part about Cosby's career. And one reason why a lot of people didn't like Cosby, before even all the stuff came out. But Cosby himself had really gone after rap culture. And there was, like 20 years ago, before all the other stuff we know about Cosby now came out, he was reviled by many black comedians and many people in the actors.
I don't condone any of the relationships with women that Bill Cosby had. But he was a very funny man. Very funny. I remember as a kid listening to his albums that he put out. The Tale of the Chicken Heart.
The Chicken Heart, yes.
Hilarious. Boom, boom.
I love the Chicken Heart.
So is there one reason why people laugh, or are there many reasons why people laugh?
I was actually just gonna say that. I think there are many reasons, but I don't know if there's like one reason in particular, or I don't know if there's one reason that is behind all those reasons. Like a common, a common feature of all those different reasons. There are definitely different reasons, like seeing people fall, like have all sorts of physical troubles, doing inappropriate things for that particular setting. For example, when people fart in a meeting, that's people find that hilarious, because it's completely inappropriate and it's involuntary. Well, most times I think. But I don't know if there's one, or when people are making fun of each other, but I don't know if there's one thing that is common to all of those things.
I would say, of course not, to those things. Is there one reason in common why people do anything in particular? I don't think so. We're all different. We all have.
Like if you look at smiling, would you say there's one reason why people smile? Just, I guess they're happy. You could say that's the underlying reason, but there's many different reasons why people are happy, I guess.
And it's not just if you're happy, I think. Like you can smile for other reasons.
Content, you're content. Or, I don't know.
When you're trying to persuade someone, you're not necessarily happy, but you can smile as a way of disarming them. That's it goes back to what I was saying about when you smile or you laugh, that's a social mechanism. That's a social way that you want to manipulate, not in a bad sense, but you want to manipulate the other person, right? You want them to understand a certain message from you.
Well, social animals.
I just thought of as sometimes people smile or laugh when they're holding in a secret, like someone. And I can relate to this kind of. I heard someone say she's not very good at playing Mafia because if she's the Mafia, she just starts laughing.
Yeah, they call that duper's delight. It's like when you're trying to trick someone, so you have the smirk on your face and you can't hide it. Yeah.
It can also be an aggression. You can smile to hurt someone. That's another way of using that.
Or like if you're bullying someone and you're like making fun of them, you're like, "Oh, poor baby." So it's like you're smiling at them, but really you're bullying them, I guess.
Yeah, I would think of that as more of a smirk.
Like a smirk.
Think.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting, because social animals smile. Higher animals. Dogs can smile.
Dogs can smile?
Yes.
I'm not sure if that's like related to smiling like we do. I think that's just like when they're holding their mouth open. That doesn't seem to be related to actually feeling
Well,
happiness like
and
it is for us, though.
I'm sure
it's-
the dogs say that humans smiling isn't mean the same thing that the dogs do to each other too. So
When do dogs smile, man? I cannot remember seeing a dog
really, oh
smile.
man, my Goldens used to smile all the time.
Really?
Yeah, when they
and,
see their owner, they will smile. Their
and it was not
ears will perk up.
I mean, it was a
Really?
direct response to a stimulus, so I think they actually did.
Wow.
One thing is
I-
because they've noticed like wolves have expressions, and one of them is kind of a smile, and dogs do it too. And it's basically, but one of the kind of silver fox things they noticed in the domestication experiment they were doing in Russia, creating basically tame silver foxes, is that they've suddenly started doing smile type facial expressions.
Huh.
And it's basically meant to be part of informal communication.
Cats, on the other hand, they never smile, man. They just sneer, right?
I don't know. We gotta do some research on this thing.
I guess really every facial expression we make from an evolutionary perspective, that's supposed to convey information to everyone else, right? If you're frown or if you look upset, everyone else can see that. So you're trying to communicate with them. But yeah, laughter, I'm not 100% sure what that does. I think it's also kind of a way of empathizing, maybe, like because there are certain jokes that like Jewish people will laugh at, and Jewish people think it's funny because they know the specific details of the traditions and customs. So there might be a joke that only they understand, and then like maybe Hindus, there's jokes that only they understand because they have a very detailed knowledge of their own traditions. So I feel like maybe it's a way of empathizing.
I know what you're saying, and one of the things that confuses me, I still haven't figured this out, is that, and this is from neuroscience, is that sometimes you get flushed and maybe you sweat a little and then you're embarrassed.
The physical sensation precedes.
Yeah. I haven't quite figured that out, but it's interesting.
Okay, I have heard something like, does your heart beat fast because you're nervous, or are you nervous because your heart is beating fast? I mean, intuitively, it feels like your heart's beating fast because you're nervous. Although I guess it could go the opposite way. Like, I think in scary movies, they put sounds in there that make you nervous.
Well, it's kind of your fight or flight instinct, right? And your heart starts beating faster because you're preparing to flee, which is going to take a lot of oxygen flow to your muscles. And so your heart starts getting prepared to do that for you in case fleeing is the option that you choose.
Mm-hmm.
So this is interesting. This actually is one of the arguments against free will, is that a lot of the actions we actually take them before we're consciously aware we're doing them. Like a lot of times, like when you raise your hand in class, your hand starts going up before you're consciously aware that you want to raise your hand. Which I find is kind of interesting.
Yeah, but that's kind of a reflex, right? To a certain extent, because you've done that so many times that it's just something that happens.
So yeah, it's like you're not even aware you want to raise. I guess. Yeah, but there's other things like I forget the exact analogy that's made, but even if it's like the first time you ever do something, a lot of times you do the movement before you realize consciously that you're doing the movement.
Well, one of the things that they have learned in neuroscience is that sometimes people make a decision in their brains before they're consciously aware of it. And Sam Harris uses this as an argument to say there is no such thing as the self. And I'm not sure I totally agree with that, but I do agree with it in the sense that it's not something disembodied out there. But to me, even though one may not be consciously aware of it, our brains are executing a subroutine. And there are probably incalculable numbers of subroutines all going on at the same time. And only the ones that give return some valuable information merit informing the consciousness. And that's how we work. You know.
That's fascinating.
Well, in sports, we talk about training muscle memory, that you need to train yourself to be able to react in a situation without consciously thinking about it. I mean, the best example is like hitting a fastball, because I mean, it's almost if you try to think about hitting a baseball coming at you at 90 miles per hour.
Or driving a straight shift.
Right.
Or
A lot of
using a
things
piece
to
of software.
figure out all at once. You know?
Right, if you're used to using a particular piece of software and you've used it one way for a long time, then some screwball comes along and changes the user interface to that piece of software, you're going to be messed up for a while you have to relearn how to use it again.
You know, one of the
muscle
ways
memory.
to avoid that, I don't know that it works in every
Never
case.
upgrade. No.
I don't know that it works in every case, but one of the things, like with Microsoft Word or Apple Pages or Numbers or Excel, one of the things that I do, that I try to do, I'm not always successful, is to learn the keyboard shortcuts. Because when they update it and they move things around to different menus, they still don't change the keyboard shortcut.
I'm a keyboard shortcut guy. I'm doing that all
Unfortunately,
day.
that doesn't work with like Salesforce and
Yeah.
stuff like that are really heavily web-based pieces of software. But yeah, I agree. That's a good defense.
Past activity is no guarantee of future performance.
I've heard rumors to that effect. Yeah.
In other words, Microsoft could update Word and change the keyboard shortcuts, and then you're in the same boat. But by and large, they don't do that.
Or replace the keyboard shortcuts altogether with Cortana commands that you then have to learn the voice activation for.
Just to tie in our cancel culture conversation and the humor conversation, it seems that, well, you know, like people like comedians say that they should be able to make fun of, you know, pretty much everybody that they want to make fun of, you know, and I think to a certain extent, like what people can say in comedy, you know, maybe the fact that people can take that and understand that that's comedy, maybe that denotes a certain like intelligence or social intelligence in society. But it seems like now what we're saying, you know, there increasingly like fewer things that you can talk about, that you can make fun of. And yeah, I don't know what you guys think about that, but maybe it's not a very good thing when society is not that flexible anymore, that you can't even like talk about things in a way that makes you laugh or you know, make jokes about it.
Yeah, I remember someone mentioned once that this is kind of their personal opinion, but they said like they didn't feel comedians in Russia were very funny because they couldn't say anything controversial. So all the jokes were like, we have a papa bear and a mama bear and a baby bear or whatever. They're like, this isn't funny, because anything they say that could be controversial, the government could come after them. So yeah.
Sounds like maybe it was Yakov Smirnov, who was the guy who defected from Russia to the West as a stand-up comedian.
Yakov Smirnov?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
it makes
it's
total
In
sense.
America,
80s
you
and
have the
90s.
American Express card. Don't leave home without it. In Russia, we have the same thing. Russian Express card. Don't leave home.
Right.
Or it's always in Russia.
See, good
But
one.
that was prior to
Parody
the
is
end of the
actually
Cold War.
protected by law at least in the US, and I imagine in Western Europe.
What
where
is?
You can get things like, say, Lord of the Rings, which is obviously a parody of Tolkien, and one might think they'd, be sued under the Stone Age for copyright infringement, but in fact, parody is one of the things. It is specifically protected by law that
It's fair use, yeah.
you can do that. And it's because some smart lawyer, I imagine, recognized, comedy is a good thing and we don't want to get rid of it. So we should try to find a way to make it possible, I suppose.
One thing I've heard about Russian humor, Soviet humor, and I've seen maybe at Constructivist, is that there's actually a lot of subtext in it. And the problem why is, yes, they can't come out and just directly make fun of, their leader. You can't come out and directly make fun of Nikita Khrushchev, but they use symbols and you essentially kind of have to read the subtext. It's funny because right now there's a bunch of memes going around with Winnie the Pooh that were coming out of China. Winnie the Pooh's been banned actually in China recently last year. And the reason why was because somebody started this joke that Xi Jinping looks like Winnie the Pooh. So all of a sudden, all across Chinese social media, you start seeing people posting stuff with Winnie the Pooh. And if you didn't know that, you'd say, well, this just seems stupid. Why are people laughing at Winnie the Pooh?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I remember.
Right.
that.
But if you understand what the subtext is, so some of the stuff with Russian humor, Big Bear trips and falls over Little Bear, that's actually making fun of, Nikita Khrushchev or somebody like some of these Russian leaders.
You have to read between the lines to know why it's funny. Yeah.
Right.
Which you can compare with US humor, where things like Rocky and Bullwinkle were just brutal about tearing apart parts of things in US government that they found worth poking fun at. And Rocky and Bullwinkle lasted a long time.
Interesting.
Well, speaking of Disney, it's there's Pixar movies. There's a lot of stuff, if you're just a kid watching it, you can appreciate it. But then there's a lot of other humor that's meant for, the parents. There's a lot of references in there.
So here's one interesting question. So humans have theory of mind, which means they're able to sort of see things from other people's perspective and anticipate their incentives and motivations. And not all animals have that. I think there's a certain group of animals that have what's called theory of mind. To the rest of them, when they look at another animal, it's kind of just like an object, sort of. So I wonder if you need theory of mind in order to be able to laugh. I don't know.
Maybe
Isn't theory of mind understanding what is it? Other people can know things you don't or something, or that others can have different perspectives?
I think so, yeah. It's understanding that, being able to understand that other people have their own motivations and sort of desires. Yeah, I feel like that might be necessary for comedy in a way.
How so? What's an example?
Because often when you laugh at something, like in a sitcom, it's someone in a situation different from yourself. And it's like you're laughing at their situation. Or if someone bumps into a wall and that's funny, it's part of what makes it funny is you have to be able to I feel see it from their point of view in order to start laughing. I don't know. If they're just an object bumping into a wall, then you wouldn't find it funny. But I don't know.
But if a person bumps into a wall, you have some idea how it feels to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Not really sure, man. But I think there's also different levels of comedy, the Three Stooges kind of comedy. That's a very primitive comedy, pretty or just, generally speaking, when it's just like body, comedy, like seeing people fall and get hurt. And that's the kind of thing, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just speculating, but I think that's the case, that monkeys find those things funny, like if you fall, like maybe the monkeys will find it funny, or the apes will find it funny. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I think that might be the case. At least children find it funny, right? Like even like babies, like when you do like silly stuff, like you hit yourself or something like that, and then you kind of like laugh. Babies will laugh at that, like they understand body comedy pretty well, like almost like an adult, they understand that. But they don't understand subtle comedy, they don't, even when they, was it you, Sushi, or David, you're talking about the Pixar thing. The kids will understand part of it, but they won't understand all the subtlety, that it makes certain jokes, so they will miss out on some stuff, so it's almost like there's different levels of comedy, and you do need to have different kinds of awareness to catch it.
Now, here's an interesting question. Can something be funny and not involve people or any living beings? Can something be funny and just be about objects or, yeah?
Mm.
Good question.
I feel like people are pretty essential to comedy. Like if you take out people, I don't know if something with just objects can be funny. I think you have to be like sort of empathizing with someone else or like relating to them in some way.
Well,
Okay,
my,
the
I mean,
closest-
my dog could do stupid things and I would look at them and I would laugh like heck at my dog doing stupid things, but it involved me, the person, interpreting what my dog was doing as a stupid thing. That was
And another
Cats are definitely
animal
funny,
or
but maybe
creature.
it's because like what Craig said, right? We're like kind of like almost personalizing the cats when they do that.
Sorry, Carolyn,
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, as far as humor not involving people, the closest thing I can think of is my sister and I were watching a trailer for Paranormal Activity.
And you found
And
that
there
was
was
funny?
this I don't or my sister started laughing at one, like, it's hard to explain. There was like a bedroom door and or a bedroom and the door randomly flew open and my sister started laughing, I guess because it was so
Oh, just random
abrupt or
things.
something. Yeah.
Things that are just really random and like out of the blue can be funny, even if they don't involve people.
Well, horror can be funny, it can be unintentionally funny.
Yeah, like attempts at horror that
Yeah.
a little bit fail can be funny.
Well, I'm thinking about stuff like an exploding toilet. Could be very funny.
Yeah. No, good point. It doesn't have to involve people. It just has to be outrageous or bizarre. Yeah.
An exploding toilet, yeah. That's a good example.
That's really interesting, like how little children find peekaboo hilarious. And I think that's to them it's really bizarre that like you could have no face and then out of nowhere a face appears. So I think the fact that they don't understand it makes it hilarious to them. Whereas to us, because we have that knowledge of what's going on, it's less funny. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of what we were talking about, like different levels of humor. Like not only do young children not really understand adult humor, adults don't generally find children's humor as funny.
Well,
Yeah.
it's because we have a sense of object permanence. If we didn't have a sense of object permanence, it'd seem, incredibly bizarre. Like he was
Yeah,
here.
that's why
now he's
magic
gone.
works in some respects. So the question I'm going to throw out to you guys, I guess, probably before we adjourn for the evening is, what would it take for an AI for us to say an AI had a real sense of humor? Because
They try to do that, right? Like
Any of them now
to,
do, but
they try to make AIs with a sense of humor. Yeah.
Yeah, and how would you know when it does, or how would you determine that you can say, okay, yeah, that's a funny machine?
I personally think the first machine to have a sense of humor will not be one that is programmed. It will learn itself.
Oh, okay, sure. So
That is very possible, but you can kind of fake it. I don't know if that qualifies a sense of humor, but I can definitely see that how you would fake it. Like you would understand the patterns, right? That makes something funny, and you would incorporate that into the code, right?
Mhm.
So if the computer is seeing, Three Stooges, or if the robot is like looking at someone like fall, in a way that we would generally find funny, they would the machine would find that funny. So but that's not really spontaneous, right? It's just something that you write into the code.
right, and is that actually a sense of humor though, right? Because I could probably write a program that could say generate spoonerisms from input text. And I happen to think spoonerisms are utterly hilarious. I go to the Renaissance Festival every time I go. I make a point of going to see Zilch, the Tory seller, because I love his spoonerisms, even though I've heard them a million times. But if I had a program, I could write a program that created spoonerisms. Would that program actually have a sense of humor? And I don't know how I would tell.
Well, I thought that people have written joke writing programs.
Oh, yeah.
But,
Yeah, I don't think that would actually count. We would think that they had a sense of humor.
Mhm.
But really,
they-
Well,
it would
I
just
guess
be a
the
reaction
question,
that was coded into them.
I
does
guess the
program find it
question
funny?
is, can you write a program that would find Will Rogers funny, that also finds Jerry Seinfeld funny?
Well, I only do one half of those,
I also
half
find
of that.
Twelfth Night
So,
funny.
yeah.
When you haven't programmed the computer to think Jerry Seinfeld is funny.
Could it discover on its own that different types of people are funny? Yeah. I don't know.
Damn good question.
That is a
If it did, if there was a machine that did that, then would we be okay in concluding that it has a sense of humor? I don't know. I don't know either. That's why I'm curious to know what people think about it.
Well,
Like
go ahead, Carolyn.
So do you mean like as an expression of individuality on the AI's part, kind of? Like people sort of have their own style of what they find funny?
Maybe. Yeah, sure. I think that'd be part of it.
Well, I think there's two ways of looking at it. If humor, there is an evolutionary basis behind humor. I mean, could an AI on its own develop a sense of humor because that confers an advantage or fitness to the AI?
I don't know, but I'm
And
not
if
sure
it
that I would.
doesn't, is it intelligent?
I'm not sure I would measure its evolutionary pressure the same way that I would measure mine, right? Because it's a different environment that we're talking about, and evolution is adaptation to an environment or the changes in an environment.
Right, but we're presumably, because our relationship to the AI would be human, because we're the only way we'd be able to judge the AI is on human basis. So if it developed a sense of humor spontaneously,
what if one machine told another machine a joke and the other machine cracked up laughing about it, and we as humans didn't get it at all?
Well,
what would we think about that?
There
Yeah,
was
we
a
don't know.
situation, it seems like it was about a year, maybe a year and a half ago, where this company that manufactures robots that are connected to an artificial, quote, artificial intelligence. Spontaneously, these two robots began to speak to each other in a language the builders didn't know.
That's insane.
Neither one of them laughed, but that's serious.
right?
I think Facebook did something like that, where they had written some code that communicated in some kind of a substrate with another piece of its code, and the programmers did not know what information it was. That's actually pretty common in machine learning programs, is that you actually have no idea what they're doing in their guts. And that's a big area of research right now, is to make them more transparent so that you can have the human operators, programmers, whatever, be able to ask the machine, how did you arrive at this decision, and have some kind of an explanation of it.
Well, the other thing to look at is humor an emergent property? I mean, could a sophisticated, I mean, once you get an AI that's sophisticated enough, it just starts laughing.
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, those are all like really good questions. That's an interesting conversation. Thanks for bringing it up, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Something else I thought of is there's kind of a big difference in your self-perception. Like when people are laughing at you, and there's a big difference in self-perception depending on whether you intended for it to be funny or not.
They're
Like
laughing at you or with you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like if they're laughing at you, you feel embarrassed, versus if they're laughing with you or something you intended to be funny, then you feel good or clever or something.
Yeah, because if they're laughing with you, they're kind of showing that you're intelligent. You know, you thought of something that was like funny, but if they're laughing at you, then it's the opposite. They're showing you're incompetent, or that you're, I don't know, whatever bad quality. But yeah.
Well, it's also a group dynamic. I mean, this is where humor, and this is what Craig loves to hear, is that the politics is that you use humor to reinforce group dynamics by mocking somebody else.
Yeah, and it's interesting how laughter is contagious. So, like, I think they've done some psychological experiments on this, where they'll have someone intentionally tell a joke that's not really that funny at all, or it just doesn't feel fun, and they'll have a bunch of people pretend to laugh at it, and then they'll take another person that they didn't tell about it, and they'll see that person also ends up laughing, even if the joke really wasn't funny and the other people were just told to laugh.
That's a very good point, and that's isn't that the reason why they have the soundtracks or the
laugh tracks?
The laugh tracks in sitcoms, because if you hear people laughing, you kind of, it's funny. There's a bunch of people I mean, I think most of those people are dead at this point. The people that actually recorded the laughing, or that were recorded laughing.
They
so it's
do
kind
it
of
in WandaVision.
Yeah, it's a cut. They did it in WandaVision. Yeah, that's a funny show, isn't it? That's a good show.
It's like what's like in the theater though, when they cue you when it's time to applaud, right? And that's what the laugh track is. It's a cue that, hey, it's time to laugh now.
They used to have that in silent movies, right? They would say this. I think they would have those cues, very strong cues in silent movies. They would tell you when to
sure.
Laugh. Yeah, I think that was the thing.
Now they also have a piano player kind of sing like, who would provide the during the dramatic chase scene, or dun 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 dun, and then the funny part might be do 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 do.
Yeah. So yeah, the social part of it is definitely it's definitely part of it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Anyways, it was a good conversation, guys.
Want to do a song this year? A final. Can you think of a song about humor?
I'm trying to think of a song specifically about humor
or cancel culture.
I'm trying to think. I was actually working on something for the philosophy group. Hold on a second. It's not. I don't think it's about humor. I guess it could be funny.
Whatever it is.
Hold on a second. I was actually hoping Frank would be here. I think he would appreciate it more. I got to load up the lyrics because I haven't memorized. I don't remember lyrics anymore.
It's okay.
I'm still thinking about the difference between someone laughing at you versus with you. I think, like, even if you sort of unintentionally make a mockery of yourself, it could improve your social standing because people find you amusing.
Yeah, it could. But yeah, I guess it probably hurts more than it helps, but I guess it could help. Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, thanks
I
for
would think
watching,
the
guys.
traditional role of the jester was just that, right? People who made fun of themselves to improve their social standing within the court.
But that was that's intentional, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's sort of like, yeah, like if you intentionally make people laugh, it's like you said something clever. If you unintentionally then make people laugh, you probably said something dumb.
Gotcha.
Okay, I just thought of a song for humor.
All right.
All right,
Just
let's
reminded me.
let's finish.
Craig just reminded me of a good song for humor.
Let's finish it with a song.
Some people call me Space Cowboy. Some call me the gangster of love. Some people they call me Maurice, as I speak of the pompous of love. Picker, I'm a grinner, I'm a lover, I'm a sinner. Playing my music in the sun. I'm a joker, I'm a smoker, I'm a midnight toker. Sure don't want to hurt no one. Woo-hoo. You're the cutest thing that I ever did see. They love your features, wanna shake your tree. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it all the time. Ooh, baby, sure show you good time. I'm a picker, I'm a grinner, I'm a lover, I'm a sinner. In the music, in the sun. I'm a joker, I'm a smoker, I'm a midnight joker. Sure don't want to hurt no one. Here's a song just goes on the stage.
Huzzah!
Awesome, guys. Great stuff, Sashir. Man, we have everything in this podcast, man. We have philosophy, comedy, music,
Space.
space,
We got it all.
O'Donnell's.
David, you're on mute. Oh, David, I was just gonna say you're on mute if you were saying something.
We have Marcel.
Copyright violations.
Copyright violations.
Art jokes. Yeah, you name it. You got it.
Anyways, thanks for watching, guys.
All right.
And it was
Thanks
fun.
for hosting, Bruno.
Thank you. Good night.
Sorry's.
Yeah, I'm talking to whoever's watching this, not necessarily to you guys, but